favorite birds. I know all of you obviously like them also. So, but I will turn it over to you, Fred. Thank you, and thanks everybody for coming.
I'm Fred Bassett. I'm a master bird bander. I used to band all kinds of birds, but over the years I've kind of narrowed that down and just focus on hummingbirds now. For those of you that might remember Bob and Martha Sargent that ran the Hummingbird Study Group, and we had a big banding station in the spring and fall at Fort Morgan. I'm a follow-on organization to what they did. I'm fairly experienced at banding hummingbirds. I've banded from Miami, Florida to Haines, Alaska in over 1,200 locations and banded over 30,000 hummingbirds. So maybe I know just a little bit about what I'm talking about. My website is hummingbirdresearch.net, but if you just Google Hummingbird Research there, if you want to, there's a real good plant list if you're really interested in planting for hummingbirds and that sort of thing, and that's a big deal with people now, especially planting for winter hummingbirds, that sort of thing. Now what I'm going to do today is I'm going to spend the first half of the program talking about our wonderful ruby-throated hummingbirds that deserted us last week. There's still just a few around, but 99% of them are gone now. They'll be back in the spring. And in the second half of the program, I'm going to introduce you to something new, wintering hummingbirds. And I don't make any bones about it to anybody. The reason I do these programs is to try to convince you to leave a feeder out all winter long. And if you have a hummingbird between the 1st of November and the 1st of March, I'll come to your home and identify that bird and band it for you. In the wintertime in Alabama, I've banded 11 different kinds of hummingbirds. So I'm going to show you some beautiful things that are here that you didn't know about. So the main thing you need is a hummingbird feeder. And it doesn't really make any difference what kind of feeders you have. This is a perfect pet feeder there that makes millions and millions of those. The saucer feeder works real well, that sort of thing. Any kind of commercial feeder that you can get works well. What I don't recommend is what I call arts and crafts feeders. If you go to a craft show and somebody's got feeders made out of bottles or those are quite often prettier, but there's one problem with them, they don't work. They will either continually drip and the fluid will come out of them, go everywhere, or they'll get a vapor lock and nothing will come out of them. And none of them have insect guards, and so insects will get in them, and you don't want insects in there because, especially if you get bees, they'll run the birds off, and you don't want to do that. I'm going to introduce you to one different kind of feeder here today. Put it in this thing like this, and I'm going to back off with this fishing line and open this trap by pulling on this. And believe it or not, your hummingbird will come up and fly around a couple times and go in to get to the feeder, and I just close the door behind it. Sometimes it's that easy, and sometimes it's not. But what I really wanted to show you is these real tiny little feeders. These are perfect for in the wintertime. It takes a tablespoon of sugar and 4 tablespoons of water to fill that. And I go to people telling them they've got these giant feeders with a half gallon of sugar with it. Well, they're not going to drink that much water all winter long. When you buy your hummingbird feeder, except one of those little ones, it's going to come with a package of hummingbird food. What you do with it is take that package to the nearest trash can and drop it in there, because it's no more than sugar with red food coloring in it. And the reason they put that red food coloring in there is to convince you it's something special, so you'll come back and pay 5 times what you pay for sugar. And red food coloring does nothing whatsoever to attract hummingbirds. Now there are people that will tell you that red dye will kill hummingbirds. I can tell you it's red dye number 5. It's not a proof of human use, and so I wouldn't use it. If you put water in this cup, and ants won't come across that, but now in our high-tech world, they've got something that's even better. It's one that's upside down like this. You can buy these at any birding store there that has it's upside down. It's got insecticide in it. The bird can't get to it with that. They're going. But now the most obvious thing about him is this red. It's called gorget on his throat here. This iridescent red. A white ring around his neck, and it doesn't go all the way around the back of his neck like people tell me all the time. Kind of a dingy gray breast and all dark tail feathers. That's a hummingbird band. This happens to be a hummingbird named the old guy that came back to a house in Electron Forest for 8 years. We have found through banding that some hummingbirds live a lot longer than we used to think. And I get to play with those on a regular basis. You ever try to catch a bird for the 8th and 9th year and he knows everything you've done. It's to be real interesting trying to do that. Now let's talk a little bit more about the gorget here. You see the red in the throat of this bird? And the same bird's just going to turn its head. So it's black now. What's the deal? The color in a throat or gorget of a hummingbird doesn't come from pigment. It's not like people are wearing red in here. It comes from iridescence. So unless the bird is in the sunshine and basically pointed at you, it's not going to be that bright red color. So if he's turned all the way around, it's going to be just dark. I had 4 or 5 calls within the last month of people that had black hummingbirds in their yard. If it's a female ruby-throated hummingbird, he's saying, well, hello, darling. That might start to some things we'll talk about later. Now, I get people that have, most often called ruby red throats there, and they have this other kind of hummingbird in their yard in the summertime too. And this is the other kind they have. This is a female ruby-throated hummingbird. Only the adult males have the red throat. And feeder in the summertime, if you've got a bird that's just white all the way down like that, that's going to be a female ruby-throated hummingbird. This is a female that came back for 8 years to a home in Tallahassee. They get to be my friends. I'm not sure they consider me their friends, but they're my friends anyway. Late in the season, people think, I got all female hummingbirds. No, you don't, because that's a male ruby-throated hummingbird. It's one that's hatched this summer. And you can tell it's a male because of the lines of green dots in his throat. It's called stippling. When they come out of the nest, they've got those. But as the summer goes along, they start getting individual red feathers in their throat. If it has even one red feather in its throat anywhere, that's a young male. And by the time they leave, some of them, as much as half of their throat will be filled in. And they'll go into the tropics for the wintertime, and then they'll do a complete change of feathers or molt, and they'll be adults when they come back in the spring. So in the springtime, it's all adult females and adult males. Let's talk just a little bit about their life cycle now. We had a lot of hummingbirds until last week. If you notice, right after the hurricane really had nothing to do with it, but there was that cold front right behind it with a strong north wind. Well, if you were looking at radar that night, the whole eastern United States was lit up. Back years ago, when they used to say, we've got ground clutter, well, guess what? That's not ground clutter, that's birds moving. There were millions of birds moving there. And there's a strong north wind, and they'd been sitting waiting for it, and boom, most of them just rode that stuff all the way to Mexico. They know what they're doing. Matter of fact, I'll go ahead and tell you now that over the past 20 years, I've banded over 1,000 ruby-throated hummingbirds in the winter, and desperately trying to find out where they come from, because never had we had one of them recaptured anywhere else. So we didn't know where these birds nested. Our birds here go to the tropics and they're replaced by Yankee birds. I tell people that those Yankee birds come down, they see that big ocean, they go, oh, I ain't going across that thing, and they stay here. So it's a different set of birds. So I've given up telling people, oh, I got a bird that didn't leave. Okay, thank you. I'll come to your house. But that's not what it is. Well, I'm going to tell you, within 3 days, from Brownsville, Texas, to Cedar Key, Florida, hummingbirds show up coming across here. The first 2 weeks, it's all adult males. After that first 2 weeks, females start following along. In the springtime, hummingbirds come to your feeder. They'll come like once or twice, but they don't stick around because they're not trying to put on weight like they are in the fall. They'll feed a few times, and they'll just keep going, the first ones. Later, when you have a hummingbird in your yard during May or June, then they're nesting near you. But those birds are going to move north 15 to 20 miles a day, and they're going to go back all over the eastern United States to where they were originally hatched. The males get there first. They find a good area, and they start defending it against all other male ruby-throated hummingbirds. And it's not uncommon at all for hummingbirds to nest 3 times here where we are. Matter of fact, the last week or so, while she is feeding young in a nest, she's already building her second nest. So that as soon as they come out of the nest, she can breed and start laying eggs again. Say, don't just take a break. Go to the beach for a couple of weeks or something like that. But that's not the way they see it. It's perpetuation of the species. They're about the size of a half of an English walnut, and they're made from a mixture of spider webs and soft plant material. And all, on the outside of it, she puts pieces of moss or lichen. Yeah, she's got some nests here that you want to take a look at. They're kind of mashed up, but you can get an idea what they used to look like. This is in a chestnut tree. A lady in Tallahassee, Florida, her bedroom was on the second floor, and she looked out the window, and about 5 feet outside her bedroom window was this female ruby-throated hummingbird sitting on a nest. And she successfully fledged 2 young out of there. The next year she came back and rehabbed the nest and used it again. I put that in there to tell you, if you do happen to find a hummingbird nest somewhere, if you will leave it alone, there's a real good chance you may watch a hummingbird several years doing it. I know for a fact that we had a ruby-throated hummingbird that used the nest here in Alabama for 6 years because a banded friend of mine was doing a research thing, and she was banding the young in the nest every year, so it was exactly the same bird. So they'll come back year after year and use the same nest, so try not to take it down. But now my favorite one now, and Lou's got to recognize this one, this was in Opelika. This was out in the open over a pool, isn't that right?
That's right. Swimming pool.
Lou made all kinds of videos and still pictures of this and that sort of stuff. Usually they're well hidden, but sometimes they're out in the open like that. She didn't come back and reuse that nest.
No, she didn't.
I don't think most of them do. Well, most of them don't live that long, but they do. But that just showed you she's a very proud-looking mama sitting there. Now, what's she going to put in the nest? She's going to lay 2 eggs. The eggs are about the size of a Tic Tac. So, real small. Here's in a nest. And this is a nest that's just been built, so there's just room for her in the eggs. You see, actually, her breast sits right there in this nest when she sits on here. But because it's made out of a high content of spider webs, it's going to expand as the young hummingbirds grow. So she's going to sit on those eggs for about 14 to 17 days until they hatch out. And they're tiny. They come out something the size of a Tic Tac. They look like little flies, but they grow very rapidly. And baby hummingbirds, like all birds, are ugly, okay? But they don't stay ugly very long. They grow very rapidly. This is 2 of them at about 5 and 8 days. What happens is she can't lay 2 eggs at one time, so she lays 1 egg. It's about 2 to 3 days before she can lay the second egg, but she starts incubating right away. So they hatch at different times. So most of the time in the nest there's some different size there, but junior catches up later. This is about 5 and 8 days. This is actually a research project. That's a pain on that bird's leg. That you have to wait until they're at least 5 days old for the legs actually get small enough for them because they got fluid in there. This is a little bit later. This is about 8 and 11 days old here. Yeah. Hummingbirds in nests are a little bit different than most birds in that when they're young, they tend to stay down in the nest. They don't jump up on there. And the one thing is, if you see a nest like this, if you walk up to it and hum or blow on it, bills will pop right up and feed me, mama, feed me. But the last 4 or 5 days, they grow really rapidly and they get so big that they quite often can't fit in the nest. That they will wind up either standing on top of the nest and sometimes mashing it flat, or actually shinnying sideways along the limb and sitting there while mom feeds them. I was lucky enough, this happens to be the day these 2 birds fledged, and they fledged within hours of each other, so they've caught up. Now here's something that's very important for you to know. When they come out of the nest, they're as big as they're ever going to be. So don't call me and tell me that I have a baby hummingbird coming to my feeder because it's a small hummingbird. It's not. Hummingbirds are just like people. They're not all the same size. Some of them are bigger or smaller than others. So you may have a bigger, but that has nothing to do with the age of them. Because immature bird or young birds out of the nest are just as big as adults. And then you absolutely can't tell by their appearance if it's a immature bird or an adult. But you can quite often tell by behavior. If a bird comes up and instead of going to the feeder, it pecks on the side of your feet, or it sits on the top of the feeder going, I don't know how to do this. This ain't fair. That's an immature bird. And the adults don't give them any help. It's every man for itself. They either learn to feed themselves pretty quickly or they die. And that's just it's not easy in hummingbird world. All right, you're experts on ruby-throated hummingbirds except for one thing. Now, when I started doing this years ago, I found out there are a lot of people that are just absolutely crazy about hummingbirds, but not necessarily other birds. And it took me several years to find out why. And the reason is because we interact with hummingbirds. You may feed, what birds coming to the feeder over there right now, they got no idea what's going on. They're looking, they just never seen anything that ugly in their life. You know, like, what is that thing? What's it doing here? Or I have ladies tell me, oh, it almost hit me in the face. Yeah, and it did it on purpose too. They'll come right up in your face and flare, and if you run, they'll chase you. And they just think it's great fun. But they're not really going to hurt you. They cannot hurt you in any way. They can't sting you, bite you, anything whatsoever. But they're still convinced they're the meanest creatures on the face of the earth. This is one of our banding sessions. And Martin Sargent was drinking sweet tea out of that big cup right here. And I'll show you how hummingbirds interact with us. A hummingbird's going to get its share. I don't necessarily believe, but my grandmama always told me that hummingbirds migrate on the backs of geese. Well, trust me, they don't. Hummingbirds are perfectly capable of going anywhere they want in their own power. They don't need any help from anyone. It's more likely that a goose would migrate flesh in the talons of a hummingbird than a hummingbird would ride a goose. So it's not going to happen. Also, people say, especially when I start to take a hummingbird out of my trap, they go, put your hand in that hummingbird's going to stick you with that bill. Okay? Yeah. That, it's not a hypodermic needle. Their bill is actually very fragile and it breaks very easily. The most common injury we see to a hummingbird is a broken bill. And unfortunately, when you call me about your hummingbird's broken bill, I'm going to tell you it's going to die. There's nothing we can do about it. So. But they're not going to stick you, they're not going to sting you, they're not going to do anything whatsoever to hurt you. While we're here with that bill, people see that long bill and they think it acts like a soda straw. Hummingbird sticks their bill in something and sucks. That's not the way they drink it off. First thing is that bill opens like all other birds. That's the way they eat insects. And the insects provide them the proteins and vitamins and minerals and everything they need. The sugar water you feed them gives them the energy to go catch bugs. But the way they drink sugar water is their tongue is as long again as the bill, and it goes in and out about 20 times a second. And it's split and feathered at the end. And on every stroke, it brings in a drop of sugar water. And they can drink amazingly fast that way. But they don't suck there. All right. Now, if anybody's fed hummingbirds in there for a while, they've been told by a self-appointed expert, you got to take your feeders down by a certain date, or the hummingbirds will stay and they'll die from the cold, and it'll be your fault. Most of the hummingbirds are already gone, and they've been cold in Alabama yet. Them leaving has nothing whatsoever to do with the cold. When they get through breeding, their time here is up, and it's time for them to go back to the tropics for the winter time. Also, what we've learned over the years is they're a lot more cold-hardy than we used to think. When it gets real cold here, we have found out that if hummingbirds have access to a liquid feeder, it really doesn't make any difference how cold it gets. I trained a lady 4 years ago in Alaska to band hummingbirds. She went back to Cordova, Alaska, and she had a male and a female Anna's hummingbird spent the winter at her house. Now, let me talk to you about that a little bit. Years ago, the only kind of hummingbird we had in the eastern United States was a ruby-throated hummingbird. And the reason for that is what I call a self-fulfilling prophecy. First thing is, everybody was a good soldier and we were told to take our feeders down, so you took your feeders down. And then, even if somebody did see a hummingbird in the wintertime and tried to tell somebody, Fish and Game or Audubon or something like that, they were told, I know you thought you saw a hummingbird. We don't have hummingbirds in the wintertime. That was a moth. And so there were no winter hummingbirds. And actually, a lady named Nancy Newfield over in Louisiana was the first one that said, that's not right. And she started getting people to leave feeders out and winter hummingbird. She taught Bob Sargent, who taught me, and we found out anywhere I go and start giving talks and that sort of stuff, winter hummingbirds show up. Well, guess what? They've been here all along. The only thing that's happened in the last 25 years is we've gotten a little bit smarter, that we have birds here in the wintertime. Now, let me show you. This is, since I started banding on my own, the last 20 years in Alabama and Florida, I've banded 11 different kind of hummingbirds, 3,588 hummingbirds. So, yeah, they are here. Lots of different kinds. The trick is, the closer you are to the coast, the more birds there are. But here in Auburn, I've banded quite a few birds during the winter time. If you're gonna leave a feeder out, leave it out all winter long, because now, normally there's a dry spell for a good while before the winter hummingbirds start to show up. And 80% of the winter hummingbirds I ban are actually in December and January. The most common western hummingbird here in the wintertime is a rufous hummingbird. This happens to be an adult male who, this is, out of all the hummingbirds we have, this is the easiest one to identify. I can talk to you for 5 seconds and I know it's an adult male rufous hummingbird because his whole body is this reddish brown color, which that color is rufous. It has an orange gorge in the throat. My favorite description of that was a lady in Waycross, Georgia a few years ago. I learned that if somebody calls me about a winter hummingbird, I don't ask them questions because if I say, is your bird purple with pink spots? I go, yeah, that's what it looks like. Come to my house. That does no good. So I say, please describe your bird to me. And I can usually figure out what it is. This lady said, my bird is the color of fresh pine straw in the early morning sun. I said, well, you have an adult male rufous and you're a writer. How did you know? I said, trust me, I know. And I'm going to steal that and use it from you. But if you think your ruby-throated is mean, this guy we call them junkyard dogs. This is the longest distance migrating hummingbird in the world. Most of them that we get here come out of Alaska or Western Canada. And I tell people, they don't have time to mess around. Get the hell out of my way, it's mine. That sort of thing. Now, let me show you a female rufous hummingbird. This is a very special one. This picture was taken like 5 years ago now by a lady in western Oklahoma who was she was a photographer. She wasn't a hummingbird person. She was taking pictures of ruby-throated hummingbirds. And when she started looking through her picture, she realized that that's not a ruby-throated hummingbird. And she realized something else. It had a band on its leg. And she was a pretty good photographer because she read P06, there's 109, okay? That was the number on that band. She contacted the National Bird Banding Laboratory and they told them that was a female rufous hummingbird that I had banded the previous winter in Montgomery, Alabama. She contacted me about the bird and I told her, thank you very much. And the bird will be back in Montgomery in about 3 weeks. And that bird was back in Montgomery this year for its 6th winter. It's named Precious, and the host spends most of her days sitting on her back porch, drinking coffee and talking to Precious. This happens to be a female rufous that came back for 8 years to a home in Niceville. Its name was Ruferocious because it did not like anybody or anything. It was not anything out of here. A lady had a Doberman Pinscher and did not go outside because the bird was attacked. Mean little creature. This is a young male that's molting during the wintertime, turning brown like that. And here's one in Valdosta last winter. It's these white things here are pins with glass feathers coming in, but I just love that picture. This looks like a creature from the plant Nortron, doesn't it? But hummingbirds are wonderful creatures. Well, let me talk a couple of special, well, no, first, you recognize this bird?
Yes.
This is your bird.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Lou is an excellent photographer. This is his bird that came back for 2 years. I put this in there to show you. If you have a green bird in your yard that has rufous on the interior part of its tail feathers like that, that's got to be a rufous hummingbird. But this was an immature female rufous hummingbird that Fred Dietrich, who bands for me in Tallahassee, Florida, it's been 6 years ago now. In January, the home banded that bird. 5 months later, that bird was caught in Chaninga Bay, Alaska. And it didn't ride a goose. It went all the way by itself. We know they go a long way. The second longest bird is this bird called Miss Canada. This bird was banded in British Columbia, about 50 miles west of Banff, the big national park up there. And I caught it in foliage the next 2 winters. I tell people, birds are not stupid. When it gets cold, they go to the beach. So I get a lot of these birds back for years and years and years, and through banding we get them caught in other different places like that, we learn about migration patterns, we learn birds in different places, and all sorts of different things like that. The second most common western hummingbird here in the wintertime is a black-chinned hummingbird. They're like double first cousin with a ruby-throated hummingbird. And if you see that bird from any other angle than this, it just looks exactly like a male ruby-throated hummingbird. So if you see him turn sideways, his gorge is just going to be black. That's why they're called black-chinned hummingbirds. But here before long, And then in late November, somebody will call me and say they have a ruby-throated that didn't leave. It'll be my first black-shinned hummingbird. I'm normally banding about 15 to 20 of those here in the wintertime. If I get a look at all, I can tell it's a male, but if it's a female, I defy you to tell a ruby-throated from a black-chin until you get it in your hand. There's some things it does its tail, it does this, that, but basically, in my hand, I can tell them apart, but it's tough otherwise. But good number of those here in the wintertime, and I have banded those here in Auburn. This is the smallest bird in North America. This is a Calliope hummingbird. It is gorgeous, different. Instead of being a full gorgeous, it has these reddish purple feathers that are extended, and it can do something absolutely amazing with those. Check this fella out. To set this up, that's a female Calliope hummingbird. And this boy can extend his gorget all the way out past 90 degrees like that. As I say, he's working for it. He's doing everything in the world to convince her that he is the finest looking thing she has ever seen. And he will be honest and trustworthy forever and ever. Whatever he needs. Isn't that wonderful? I'm glad we're under here. This is this summer in Idaho. I band about 1,000 of these in the high mountains in Idaho every summer. And let's say we really get those here. This is one in Ashland, Georgia. Just about this time last year that I banded. One other one here in hand. But what's really important about this is, remember when slides had dates on them? This is the 20th of January, 1998. And the reason that's important is because Bob Sargent, who taught me to band, gave a talk in Gadsden, Alabama on the 19th of January, the day before this. And some gentleman there had never heard of winter hummingbirds, but he went home that afternoon and got a feeder and put it out. 7 o'clock the next morning, he called Bob and said, I've got one. Wow. It's Alabama's first male Calliope hummingbird. Well, guess what? That bird was already in his yard. Okay? But if you don't have a feeder up in the wintertime, you won't see it. This is an immature bird in Tallahassee last winter with any kind of extended gorget feather like that. That's got to be a Calliope. And a female is a generic hummingbird. They're what I'm describing as baby hummingbirds, because they're about 2/3 the size of a ruby-throated hummingbird and that sort of thing. But pretty common here. Now we're getting into some really different looking thing, a buff-bellied hummingbird. This is a bird that actually migrates backwards. They breed in Mexico and the very southern tip of Texas. In the wintertime, they come up along the Gulf of Mexico, and I usually catch them along the coast. Matter of fact, I was telling Lou, I got a call yesterday from Kate Kegley in Pensacola, Florida. Her buff-belly got back, I guess Friday or Thursday afternoon, back for the 4th year. So she's really excited about that. So Monday morning, I'm going to go down and see if I can catch it. But much bigger than our other hummingbirds, got a red bill. Both the males and the female have a green throat, and amazingly enough, they have a buff belly and chestnut-colored tail feathers. Here's one sitting on a feeder. And this happens to be a picture that came up on the internet a few years ago from a lady on Jekyll Island, Georgia. And I sent her a message back that said, anybody besides me knows that hummingbird's wearing a band? And of course nobody had. And that's the kind of thing I look for, because that's what I do. She asked me to come over and so we could try to find out maybe where this bird had been banded. I went over, that bird would have nothing to do with me. As soon as it got out of my truck, it wouldn't come near anything. And I said, I know what this is. So get somebody to get a couple of pictures of this bird. And the very next day she got a photographer. They got the letter and 3 numbers. I said, I'll tell you the other 2 numbers. I banded that bird a month earlier in Mobile, Delta. Allen's hummingbird, and you're not going to be able to tell this from a rufous hummingbird unless it's an adult male like this. If it's an adult male, Allen's has a green back where the rufous has a rufous back. Okay? But that's hard to tell because some rufous have a little bit of green in their back. That's what I just put that in there because some people want to know all the different kind of hummingbirds you might be able to get here. I won't even mention it might be an Allen's when I come to your house, but if I start banding a rufous and I get excited, it's not a rufous, it's an Allen's. With your hands when you're swimming like that, that's the reason they're able to hover. They can go perfectly still for as long as they want to, up, down, side. They can even fly upside down for short periods of time. And it's because their wings are shaped differently and they're hinged differently. And they flap a whole lot faster than other birds. This is a broad-tailed hummingbird, so Rocky Mountain equivalent to our ruby-throated hummingbird. When you go to Colorado next summer, if you start talking about ruby throats, they're gonna know you're a flatlander. Okay? The difference between a ruby-throated and a broadtail, this picture here that they think is a ruby, that's actually a broadtail hummingbird. Ruby-throated has a black line under its chin right there between its gorget and it's white on a broadtail. This happens to be the only adult male we've had here in the east. This spent the winter at a home in Pensacola a few years ago. This is what a female looks like. If you've ever seen a generic hummingbird in your life, it's a female broadtail hummingbird. They can be very, very hard to tell apart. But this bird is the only return one I've had. Blue throat, green, and dark blue tail feathers. Of course, we could never get one of these here until about 12 years ago. This one showed up in Mobile, Alabama. It's the first one in the east, and after that, quickly I banded 4 more in Alabama, and this is the first one in Florida. Adult male in Bluntstown, Florida, and now we're up to 14 of them in Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. But the most famous one is this one. This is a female broad-billed hummingbird, much more subdued looking bird. You can tell it's a broadbill by the red in its bill there. It looks like a female ruby-throated hummingbird on steroids. But what's famous about this bird is I banded her on a bluff overlooking Mobile Bay in Spanish Fort. And she stayed there all winter long. She was still there in April. And so my friend Jeanette that lived in the house said, if that bird's still here, it's nesting in my yard, I'm gonna go outside and find the nest. What a fat chance of that. Within 15 minutes, this is what she found. This is the only western hummingbird ever found sitting on a nest in the eastern United States. And there was a trick to it. Western hummingbirds nest out in the open, unlike our ruby-throated hummingbird. It was actually nesting on a limb that had broken off of an oak tree and was hanging down, and she had built a nest at the bottom of that limb hanging down. And it was, unfortunately, there was not a beautiful adult male broad-billed hummingbird there for her to mate with, and she wasn't interested in those ragamuffin ruby-throateds there, so her eggs were sterile. So it was not successful. But, you know, maybe next time it will be. And maybe it has been, we just haven't seen it yet. From Soldotna, Alaska last summer when I was up in Idaho, he contacted me 2 weeks ago, or 2 days ago, that he caught the first Anna's hummingbird in the Kenai Peninsula last week. But they also come east here. And when the males start getting their gorget feathers, it's kind of like a ruby-throated hummingbird there, but then something happens and it goes all the way across the top of their head, and that's what an adult male looks like. Isn't that a beautiful, beautiful bird? The closest we've had an adult male to here is this one a few years ago up in Huntsville. A female is going to once again look like a ruby-throated hummingbird on steroids, but she's going to have pink gorget feathers in the center of her throat. This happens to be my most recent one. This was in Pensacola 3 years ago. So, as I tell people all the time, hummingbirds have wings and they don't read range maps, so any kind of hummingbird can show up here anytime. A real good example of that is, it's been close to 15 years ago now, a lady called me in Montgomery on New Year's Eve that she had a hummingbird. She had a ruby-throat that didn't leave. We went very quickly through, maybe that's not what it is. And she mentioned it had a little purple in its throat and said, it'd be an immature male black chin, that'd be a really nice bird. And this picture's dark, this is before cell phones, good cameras. I went over, it was still dark when I caught this bird. And I saw the purple in its throat and I was, oh, that's pretty nice. And then I saw the purple on the top of his head and I got real excited. This bird stayed in April, this is what it looked like. It was the first adult male Costa. It wasn't an adult when I caught it in the eastern United States. And about 4 years after that, Fred Bassett advanced from me in Tallahassee, Florida. I kiddingly tell people that he got jealous and just couldn't stand it. So one morning he called me and said, I think I've caught a Costa's hummingbird. Well, by then we had iPhones. I said, send me a picture. Within about 10 seconds, he sent me this picture. I said, well, it's obvious you know what that is. That's an immature male Costa. I said, Fred, where are you? Meaning, what city are you in? And his answer was, I'm locked in the cab of my pickup truck, trying to calm down enough to band this bird. How wonderful it is to get to do something you get that excited about that we're privileged to do. And I'll tell you the same story about me, about this bird. This is a magnificent hummingbird. And The bird books have just changed the name to Rivellies, but I'm not changing the name of it. It's a magnificent hummingbird. The first one of these I ever caught was in the mountains of New Mexico with a bandit friend out there. And she wrote an article about it that she thought she was going to have to get a brown paper bag and put it over my head because I was hyperventilating so bad. And so when you have the first magnificent hummingbird in your hand, if you're not hyperventilating, you're dead. They just haven't told you. Great big. This is the second largest hummingbird in North America, and it's two-toned. It's iridescent purple on top, it said iridescent green in its throat. And it is so dark green that one of the names for it's the Black Knight. We've only had one of these in Alabama. I said, this was a little rare bird because it came to Monroeville and actually came back for 2 years to a lady's home there. And we haven't had one of those since. But before that, we've had this one. This is a female that spent the winter on Humboldt Island off the coast of Georgia. Now, I get people all the time that tell me, I got a really big hummingbird. And I say, no, you don't. If you got a really big hummingbird, you'd be going, let me show you what a big hummingbird looks like. This is in Louisiana a few years ago. That's a rufous, which is the same size as a ruby-throat. That's an immature male magnificent hummingbird. Look at that. See, when you got one of those, it weighs your feeder down. They are huge.
Is that one of the largest hummingbirds in the world, or what is the largest one?
No, there's the giant hummingbird in Ecuador's got an 8-inch wingspan. No, trust me, once you get down there, the closer you get to the equator, the more, the 150 different kinds of hummingbirds in Ecuador, we can't get into all those today, but no, they're actually called medium-sized hummingbirds. All these others we have are small hummingbirds. Yeah, but it's big for here. White-eared hummingbird, another Mexican hummingbird. They're very apt to name because of the big white ear. And just before I started banding, this one showed up in Biloxi, Mississippi, and stayed around for about 6 weeks. And then we went for over 20 years without one. I've been trying to catch them in Texas for several years. It was my nemesis bird. Those of you who are birders understand, nemesis bird is one you just can't quite get. I had come up to my trap, almost go in, and then 3 years ago I was in Mobile, and somebody called me and said, "You hear about the white-eared in Mobile?" And I said, "Don't even start that crap with me." But there was. This is an adult male white-eared hummingbird in Mobile in my hot little hand. I've banned a lot of hummingbirds. That's the most beautiful one. Once again, you never know what might show up. This bird has a new name. It's a Mexican violet ear. If you look at your old bird book, it's called a green violet ear. It's exactly the same bird. They changed those names so they think you might want to need to go buy a new bird book. But this is a bird that can actually show up any time of the year. It can actually show up in the summertime. Once in a while, I'll talk to somebody. Hummingbird, 2 or 3 times bigger than their ruby throat, show up for a couple hours, beat all the other birds up and left. Quite often, they're one-day wonders. The last one I know of is one that showed up in Thomasville, Georgia, about 3 years ago. It was only there for an hour or so. This is one banded in the mountains of North Carolina, and the only one we've had in Alabama is this one in Grand Bay, Alabama, a few years ago. One other hummingbird we're going to talk about. We have a bandit that works out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I got a call from a lady that said she had a giant hummingbird. And this is what Susan saw when she went over there. And I always told her, I'm glad you went because I wouldn't have known what it was. This is a green-breasted mango. And until that time, there was only 3 records in the United States, and they were all in Brownsville, Texas, which anybody that's got any good system knows that's really Mexico. But since then, another one has showed up in Dublin, Georgia, which is just east of Macon. Huge hummingbird. This bird spent all winter there. This is it in Bob Sargent's hand there. And this is what it looked like. Great, big, beautiful, beautiful bird. When the trap up, I'm going to wait for the hummingbird to go in, catch it, then I'm going to take it to my banding office, which is also the tailgate of my pickup truck. If I hadn't been to your house before, I've got a little bottle of sugar water, and I'm going to hold the bird up and let it drink. And why do you feed hummingbirds? Well, it's only polite to feed a hummingbird, but the main thing I'm doing is calming you down. When they see that bird drinking in my hand, it's not near as traumatic for the hummingbird as you think. Once I get the hummingbird in my hand, they calm right down, doesn't bother them at all. Then I'm going to band the bird. That's 100 hummingbird bands. They don't weigh anything. It takes 5,500 hummingbird bands to weigh an ounce. So they're not going to fly around with one leg down, or fly around in circles. They're not going to know they're where. The band has a letter and 5 numbers on it. I'm going to contact the National Bird Banding Laboratory and give them the band number and the data about the bird. So if that bird's encountered anywhere else, they can find out that I banded the bird. Plus, they will let me know my bird's been caught somewhere else. And I get more of those than anybody else. If my bird's caught different places or that sort of thing. It's simply because I go so many places. That's the size of a band or a pin. Like I said, they're really, really tiny. You gotta have real good eyes. I'm wearing cheaters these days, but I can still do it. I'm gonna run that band up a needle and open it up, and then I'm gonna put it in a hole in the end of these pliers, and with my big fat fingers, it's hard to see, but that's putting it around the bird's leg. By doing it that way, when I close the band, it just closes it back to a circle. So it's loose on its leg, so it'll roll around and up and down. It won't come down over its foot, but it's never tight on the bird's leg. It doesn't bother the bird at all. Then I'm going to do a series of measurements of the bird, just typical data we get on all birds, including weighing it. Then I'm going to take a series of pictures of the bird that I'm going to give you. And if it's a special bird, this is Florida's third broad-billed hummingbird in the hand of a lady down in East Point, Florida, who does not have a house anymore, unfortunately. But then I'm going to tell you a lie. And I'm going to tell you that I train hummingbirds in my spare time. Hold your hand out, this bird's going to sit in your hand. And it is. And when I put the bird in your hand, the real reason the bird sits in your hand is because it doesn't know it's loose yet. Okay? But when I put that bird in your hand, you can feel its heartbeat. You can feel how warm it is sitting in your hand like that. You're going to be like this little girl in Idaho last year. You're going to be a happy camper. You're going to want to wear a hummingbird. Thank you very much. Questions?
The effects of such storms as we just had in Florida?
No, but I can tell you just from, remember when Opal came through?
Yes.
I was told, when I started banding, I was told people in Louisiana, when storms were coming, would duct tape their feeders to rails and hummingbirds would feed in high winds. And I went, I just don't believe that. I just left my feeders out though. In my house in Montgomery, in 100-mile-an-hour winds, I had hummingbirds feeding. No problem whatsoever.
Is it safe if I mix sugar water and have some without those?
Sure.
Keep it in the fridge?
Oh, absolutely. You keep basically definitely in the
How
refrigerator.
long is it?
Well, I mean,
Couple weeks,
a couple
maybe?
weeks.